questions. Unless you just want to take off, that's fine. If you have to leave, you're not going to offend me by leaving, by the way. You want to take a few questions, Dax, or you want to get out of here? Anybody with questions? By the way, I don't mind heretical questions. Okay, I teach Israelite history at Western. Okay, I get lots of good questions. Okay, so the more pugnacious the question, the discussion is almost invariably better. So don't be afraid to ask me something.
My position is because at some point in the past I heard this, and soon as the last Amazon is brought into the kingdom, then Jesus is returning. Or basically the last.
Right. If they use the word kingdom, that sounds post-millennial. Because we need that convert to get the kingdom here. Okay, and then Jesus can come back. So it sounds post-millennial, the way you articulated it. I don't know. See, now you're baiting me.
So what's the connection between the church and the kingdom of God? What I'm saying is we're all
I know.
the church. Mm-hmm. We and all the other churches that believe in Jesus Christ as Savior, we're all part of that church. Now my own belief, right, my own understanding at the moment, is that there will be a rapture and we will be born up with those who the dead will be raised first. We will go up there with Christ, and then he will come back with us all and establish that kingdom. That's my understanding. So where is the church? That I'm not quite certain.
Yeah, you would have to ask yourself and answer for your own satisfaction whether you want to reserve kingdom talk for after the second coming, or if you're okay with using it before and after. Now, earlier, when you connected kingdom to, I'll use another word, dominion, authority. If you're going to think of the kingdom in that way, you don't need to reserve your kingdom language for later. You can use it now and later. Because there's a certain sense where, because we are the temple, we are the people of God, and some of these biblical phrases, we do have authority. And Jesus assumed that the disciples had authority. When he said the gates of hell will not prevail against you, I hope you realize that that's a defensive statement. It means that the gates of hell won't be able to withstand the church. The gates of the forces of evil aren't the ones on the offensive in that statement. It's the church. The gates of hell will give way to you. So when Jesus is around saying stuff like that, he assumes authority and dominion right now, okay, in some sense, through the church, which is his body. But you have these, again, future statements out there. So I personally, I'll tell you this much. I think the already but not yet idea helps a lot. Rather than having to pick, because what you have in theological systems, honestly, with eschatology, is you can look at Scripture and you can see where there's a lot of spiritual fulfillment. And again, that doesn't mean not real. It's just as real, maybe more real than our real. Okay? So there's a lot of this stuff going on in the unseen realm. And you also have a lot of earthly oriented talk as well. So what systems do is one says, man, I sure like that spiritual stuff. That explains a lot, to me. I'm going to become an amillennialist. I'm going to take that aspect, and that's what I'm going to champion. And another person comes along and says, I like that earthly stuff, man. That's where I'm at. That's going to be my orienting point. And I'm going to develop a system from that. The systems just pick one aspect, and it becomes the orienting thing for them. It becomes what guides them through all of the text, through all of the passages. And what I would suggest to you is, why do you need to pick? I actually see a lot of both going on, because I think, to paraphrase, something in the Gospels here, I think when Jesus said, and when the Lord's Prayer and other passages talk about, as in heaven, the unseen realm, the realm that we don't inhabit, okay? God's realm, as in heaven, so on earth. I think there's a symbiotic relationship to what happens in the seen and unseen worlds. And could it be that prophecy works on both realms, in both spheres? I think it does. So that helps me. Now, I don't have a name for that. I don't have a system name for it. It doesn't fit any of the other systems, but I don't really care. Okay. I think the reason why the systems are beautiful is because they've latched onto something that's true, but they've sort of married it a little too much to the neglect of this other stuff over here. And maybe we ought to start thinking about how to fit everything together. So I like your dominion idea a lot. See what the difference a word makes. Instead of structure, temple meaning dominion. Well, that's what interpretation's about. I mean, and if we see words used by the apostles that seem to refer to buildings, and then over here the same word seems to refer to authority, that's important. Maybe we should think about both possibilities wherever we're at, whatever passage we're at. There was another question over here somewhere. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. They're still tilting one way or the other. Yeah. Go ahead, Jake.
The way I encountered preterism initially is looking into the question that I posted online. When Jesus said that all things would come to pass before this generation had passed away, well, preterism kind of, to some people, was an answer to that. So can you shed light on how the other systems?
Yeah, it depends obviously on what this generation is. Is it the one that he's speaking to? Is it the one that he's referring to in the abstract in some future time? Those are your two main options. If it's the generation he's speaking to, then you got preterism. If you project it as an abstraction, the generation that I'm talking about, and you're assuming that he's talking about a future reality, that generation, well, that rules out preterism from the get-go. So that's really where sort of the battle is on that. Is it concrete, situated in time, to Jesus' time, or is it abstract? So that's a long way of saying I don't think the verse proves either. I don't think it proves anything. It just gives you something else to sort of think about. The real issue with preterism is the temple. And that takes you into the question of when was the book of Revelation written? And that takes you into the question of and here's the key question, are there temple references in the book of Revelation? There are, sort of inferred. Is John writing about a structure still standing, or is he referring to something that will be rebuilt or something abstract? I don't know. Because if it's still standing when Revelation is written, Revelation would have to have been written before 70 AD, because that's when the temple was destroyed. And if that's the case, then pretty much everything in there is already fulfilled. If it's not, if it's post 70 AD, then the game is wide open. Okay, then it's like we don't know what John could possibly be referring to, because he can't be referring back there. I mean, so the argument goes, he must be referring to something out in the future. Be nice if Revelation just told us. Okay, it doesn't. It's not self-evident either. Yes.
Let's put Genesis 12 on the screen without Galatians 3 side by sides.
Oh,
I mean, if you wanted to mix things up.
yeah, I know. Maybe I should have. Maybe I just assumed that, or I thought I would hit it in the course of the discussion. What Bradley's talking about is in Galatians 3 at the end of the chapter, and a little bit in the beginning. Paul point blank says that believers, Christians, have inherited the Abrahamic covenant. And what he doesn't say there in Galatians 3 is he doesn't. Here we go with the interpretive games. He doesn't specifically mention the land. Now you'd say, well, it was part of the covenant. I mean, what does he have to mention everything in there for it to be fulfilled in the church? The premillennialists would say, you bet it does. If Paul doesn't connect the land to the church, I'm not with you, Mr. Amillennialist. And the Amillennialists would say, come on, it says point blank. If you are, in Christ, you are Abraham's seed and heir according to the promise. I mean, what more could Paul say? I'll tell you what more he could have said. He could have said something about the land. You see how it just goes back and forth? Because if the Amillennialists would say, if the church inherits that covenant, then the covenant is fulfilled in the church. That's what it was looking forward to. We don't need to look any further out there for a kingdom. The answer to the Abrahamic covenant is the church. And Galatians 3 is a key text for that, but it does not specifically mention the land. And so the premillennialists will bring that up. Say, it's all ready, but it ain't yet. The land is still out there. Another question, there was one over here.
Wouldn't a lot of these distinctions you're making between premill and ammo really be between dispensational premills and historic premills?
Some of them would be. The real fight over that, I sort of wanted to reserve that for the rapture issue because that's the big battleground there. But that's fair. That's fair. Some of them, your amillennialist is going to feel more, I don't know if I want to use the word comfortable, but he's probably got more in common with the historic premill than the dispensational premill. There are fewer things they disagree about, but it's still not terribly compatible. But there is some overlap. If you do the already not yet, then you embrace a lot of amillennialism, but you don't buy amillennialism. Because you're saying, I like what you say, but you don't say enough. Okay, that's really where you're at there. And you get with historic premill, there is an already not yet sense. So there is some camaraderie there. So they'd be closer than your standard dispensational position, which includes the rapture. Anybody else? Okay, thank you for coming. Any questions? Yes.
And that is that there's some, for example, in the evangelical Church of God and the Church of God who don't believe in a rapture, they kind of substitute a place of safety. And a key verse for them is the one that says, watch and pray always, that you might be accounted worthy to escape these things that are coming and stand before the Son of Man. So
even safety within on the earth. Yeah.
And it kind of goes along like this, blessed hope. For them, I think the blessed hope is a place of safety. And let's see. So it appears that there's going to be a place of deliverance. And this would be their blessed hope. The book of Revelation speaks about this dragon going out and encountering some resistance and not being able to penetrate to a certain area, and then frustration gives up, and then goes out upon the whole earth and spewing out its wrath upon the entire population.
Does that have a name, or is it's just associated with those groups? Okay, interesting.
So it's basically the evangelical Church of God.
What's the history of that? Is that an offshoot of Armstrong's old worldwide? Because I know they had sort of an evangelical derivative of that.
Not sure, but I agree.
Okay. Anybody else? Right.
In the section where it talks about the method 24 and 30, just with all of my usually doesn't concentrate, notes that Zechariah is clearly talking about the land of Israel, not the whole world, which is apparently another topic.
So how does it apply it to either the rapture or the second coming in the note? Why would they mourn? I guess if it was the tribes of Israel, think with me here. I don't know how it could be a rapture event, because if the rapture is the removal of the church, then you have to invent some, or discern or create some sort of argument why that would make them mourn. And if it's toward the end of the tribulation, they've had lots of reasons to mourn before that. So why single that out? I don't know. I'd have to see how it's plugged in to know what I think of it. But those are two or three things I'd want to know right off the bat. Insurance doesn't say anything. It doesn't apply it in some way there.
I don't see anything here. This just kind of stood out of me.
Yeah.
It's basically contrasting the erroneous translation of
Yeah. It's interesting. You'd also have to know what the word there is for tribe, because I don't know off the top of my head how much precision there is between tribe and nation. In other words, is a word that could be used for an Israelite tribe, is that ever used of a non-Israelite nation? Again, I don't have that in my head. But if it was, that might be a reason why other translators would actually choose world there. And they would have to take the 12. Well, there is no 12. It just says all, right? All the tribes or all the nations. That would have to be part of the rationale for choosing the translation world or nations instead of tribe. But that's a really good example, because, if that's the case, you're getting into word usage. And you can tell by virtue of the translation choice there, that really takes you in different directions. And I'm not saying that the translator is being a traitor here or anything like that. You just have to make those choices, because you can't put both in your translation. You got to choose one. So, yeah, I'd be interested in doing a word study on that, see if there's any usage that's non-Israelite for that. Anybody else? Sure, go ahead.
So I was reading that shofar, which notes on that one, it was pointing out that was used for high holy feast days like Rosh Hashanah and the Day of Atonement. I had a friend who once thought that either the rapture or the second coming would probably occur on feast of weeks or Rosh Hashanah or the Day of Atonement, just because of the fact that Mark was used. And I think in Corinthians, or 1 Corinthians, he was tracing very different characteristics of life through the high.
Do you have your Logos open? Because I'd like to know if that's a transliteration shofar. And I'll tell you why. If that really is the shofar, in other words, if that's not just an interpretive translation, if you can establish that's a shofar, since that's connected with the sign of the Son of Man, that takes on importance, because if you take Revelation 12 as a series of astronomical signs, and you literally take that as a series of celestial events, you can pinpoint the birth of Christ again to within a 90-minute window. And that event coincides with the blowing of the shofar. Okay, it's Rosh Hashanah as well. In other words, everything in the Jewish calendar and everything in the Greco-Roman astro-theological calendar aligns at that moment. So if that is the shofar, that would suggest, it certainly doesn't prove, it would be one argument that you would use to suggest that what's going on in Revelation 12 is the sign of the Son of Man. And so the question is, is that a legitimate assumption to make? Because if it is, then it suggests that the same concatenation of events is associated with the second coming as they were with the first. You see all the extrapolations I just made there. Okay, but the fact that you can do that, I actually have that on my computer. I have that mapped out. I can tell you when it is. But is there any point to it? I just made 2 or 3, not leaps of logic, but leaps of faith. I guessed at that. I mean, who knows? So this is one of the reasons why I say, I know prophecy is interesting, but there are people who would hear what I just said and literally spend the next 25 years of their life trying to prove that, trying to nail that down. Why? I mean, at the end of the day, what you have is one big, really cool guess. That's all you got. It's what it'll be 25 years from now. It'll be a guess. It'll be what it is today. It's a guess. So I would be interested if that's I don't want to hold you guys up. I'll look when we shut down. I want to know if that's a translation or a transliteration of shofar. Anybody else? Any other question? Seeing none. Thank you for coming.